no stranger to the RenderATL family. She's actually been here before, and we love when the girls have been here. So I need you guys to make some noise for Miss To Manage or Not Manage, aka Taylor Poindexter.
Thank you so much. All right, how are folks doing today? Good. All right, so my name is Taylor Poindexter, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the decision of whether or not you should manage. I'm sure many of us have had the experience of having a good manager or a bad manager and the impact that that can make. So I see some familiar faces, so I know at least a few of you are familiar with my career, but I wanted to take a little time to tell you about how I got into management because it plays a big role into why I manage the way that I manage today. So imagine young me leaving college with my little computer science degree. I had decided to go ahead and leap into consulting because I thought it would be a good way to make money fast and also learn a lot while I did it. This is me right here at my first company. I was also the first Black female engineer they hired, so they put me in every piece of marketing material. This is just like one of about 1,000 pictures. But needless to say, I had the awkward experience of being put under a manager who I feel like should not have been a manager. I'm sure a few of you have experienced people like this, somebody that was pushed into management because they felt like it was the only way to further their career. And what that led to is me feeling incredibly small. Coming fresh out of college, even with a college degree, I wasn't necessarily prepared to jump into the world of consulting or computer programming. And so it felt incredibly daunting. And I had a lot of incredibly frustrating days because eventually the manager tried to push me into being a business analyst because he thought that I wasn't cut out to be a software engineer, not that I didn't have the proper support that I needed coming straight out of college. And after being at that company for a couple of years, I met somebody that actually suggested that I simply leave the company and join a more supportive team. And so that's what I did. I left the company and I joined the best team that I'd had the opportunity to work with at that time. These people told me that they did believe that I could grow into the company or the person that they wanted me to be and I wanted to be. And they gave me the psychological safety and support to help me get there. And even though I was nervous and unsure at the moment, I ended up blossoming into the engineer that I had truly dreamed of being. I went from being like a junior back-end engineer to over a couple of years, eventually becoming the back-end team lead for the company. It was absolutely phenomenal, and it felt good. Thank you. Yeah, it felt good to prove that manager wrong, and then also, get some reassurance with myself. But as I'm also sure a few of you have experienced, an acquisition. So the company that I had grown to love was acquired, and that's exciting, but also incredibly scary too. And this was not a good acquisition. It went incredibly poor. I didn't get any of my stock options. And then also the pandemic hit. And so there was a lot going on. But what the company did is they allowed me to basically take a team of about 10 back-end engineers, actually back-end and front-end, and I asked the CEO to give us one project to tackle. And I promised that that would be the first project that the company had delivered on since the acquisition. Because once the acquisition happened, we hadn't pushed out any code in literally months. But to my surprise, I was actually able to lead the team, push out a first feature that the company didn't think that we would be able to, and it felt dang good. But after about a year of that, with the pandemic, I became a little bit bogged down. And so I decided to take an 8-month sabbatical and really figure out where I wanted to take my career. And the thing I kept coming back to was I loved the fact that even if it was just a small corner of the company, to be able to create a team where people felt happy, productive, and supported by the people around them felt amazing to me. And that's exactly what I wanted to spend my time doing in a 9-to-5. Since I am not a trust fund baby and I'm not a millionaire yet and I can't quite retire, I figure why not spend my time doing what I can to maximize the amount of things that I love doing. And so in this talk, when I talk about what it takes to be a manager, or not only what it takes to be a manager, but when I refer to a manager, I'm referring to people that are responsible for other employees at the company. I know that it can be a wide range of things, and you can be an informal manager or a formal manager, but at its core, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. And referring back to that point of thinking about what brought me joy when I left that company and was on my sabbatical, the first thing I want you to think about if you're deciding whether or not you should go into management is what makes you happy. This is a bit hyperbolic, but what things about your job make you jump for joy? I know that a 9 to 5 isn't always the most exciting thing, but at least hopefully there's one or two things that you're able to do that bring you some sense of joy. And on the flip side, what makes you feel like these guys? We have Makai Pfeiffer over here that's like very much today drained me energy. And I have definitely been there, and again, a very hyperbolic, but Matthew McConaughey is past drained. He just can barely take it anymore. And so also thinking about the things that make you feel like this, at least to some degree. And then I want you to think about what it was like to be a kid. I'm sure all of us at some point remember being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? People would ask me that all the time when I was a kid. And I would always say, I want to be a veterinarian. I love animals, and the idea of being able to spend as much time as possible with animals really got me giddy. We're ignoring the fact that that also meant that I would have to see animals in terrible shape. But the point is I was trying to maximize my joy. But then, as I'm sure a lot of you also know, as you go through life, we very much get out of touch with that type of thing. But during my sabbatical, I realized that that was something that I wanted to carry with me nonstop from then on out. And it has been able to make me incredibly happy in my career. So I would encourage you, as your first step to decide whether you want to be a manager, do some reflecting on these points. And do these in line with what you think it would entail to be a manager. If they do, let's keep on to the next thing. The thing that I forgot to do. Are you ready to put in the work? At first I thought about as a manager, all I'll need to do is continue to juggle priorities and such things like that. But I have literally never heard somebody say that management is easy. And if they have said it, I would assume that they're either a liar or incredibly out of touch, or not doing a good job, quite honestly. Because humans are complex. And when you multiply that by the number of people on your team, it's just complexity on complexity, and you have an extreme amount of emotional labor that you're gonna have to carry with you day in and day out, one way or another. Difficult personalities, and I'm not saying you don't have to work with difficult personalities as an IC, but even more so as a manager because of the power dynamic, making sure that you're carrying yourself in a way that is equal across the playing field, even if somebody has a different personality. Or also being intimately involved with people's lives on your team. I'm not saying inserting yourselves into their lives, but what if one of your engineers is terminally ill? What if they're caring for somebody who is terminally ill and they have to devise a plan that allows them to continue to work, but then also handle their personal responsibilities? Making sure that you're able and in a place to do these things is incredibly important. And emotional labor aside, we're not even talking about all the other curveballs that management will throw at you. Juggling priorities. And before I was a manager, I would come into work oftentimes, have my little to-do list, put my headphones on, and work my way through it, and then leave when I was ready to leave. I try to do that now as a manager, but my team's problems are my problems. So if they have a problem, even if it is a focus day for me, I have to make sure that I'm making space for them to feel cared for, and I'm not blocking them from continuing. After that, I want you to check your ego, and I want you to check your biases. If you're somebody who thinks that, God dog, I am smart, if I just had a little team of minions that I could tell what to do, I would absolutely take over the world. You're exactly the type of person that should not be in management. Even though I'm the manager, a lot of my time is spent serving. So making sure that you're okay with that in one way, shape, or form, however you want to serve your team. And then from there, checking your biases. And sometimes when I say this, people will say oh no, Taylor, I don't have biases, but thank you so much. Every single one of us has biases. We've all gone through life and experienced whatever we've experienced, and we carry that with us. And I believe that the best way to combat that is just acknowledging it, not saying you have to scream it out right now, and just knowing that within yourself and putting stopgaps in place so that you can counteract those biases to make sure that you're managing your team equally. And remember, this is more of a reflection, but there is a range of types of managers. So there are managers that could hop right in and complete a ticket no problem at the drop of a hat, but then there are also managers that aren't technical at all. They may know the lingo, but they'll have to go to the team for basically everything technical to be handled. knowing where you land in that range. For myself, I consider myself right in the middle. I was a software engineer at one point. I can complete a ticket if I need to, but you probably don't want me to if I'm being quite honest. So I leave that to my team and let them handle it. And if you are an incredibly technical manager, one thing that I want you to be aware of is making sure that you're aware of the power dynamic when you're engaging in conversations with your team. Even if your team has psychological safety, because you are the manager, if you're throwing out ideas or telling them this is what you think the solution should be, they may be more inclined to agree or just side with you because you are the manager. So making sure that you're giving them space to speak first and have their ideas feel heard. I sometimes feel like when people are deciding whether or not to go into management, they feel like it's the end-all be-all, they have to get it right, or like there's no coming back from it. And while I do think you should do your due diligence to make sure that management is right for you, if you hop in and you hate it, you can always hop back out. You don't have to stay, we're not gonna trap you, I promise. And even that aside, if you like it, but maybe you miss being an IC, you can engage in what's called the pendulum career. So you spend a couple of years being a manager, and then you spend a couple of years being an IC, and you just swing back and forth until you get your fill, making sure you keep most of your skills sharp on each side and never getting bored. You've made it through all of these questions and reflections, and you still want to be a manager. So lets me know you have the grit it's going to take to be an awesome manager. So how do you land your first role? A lot of times I hear people get frustrated because they feel like they have to have the management experience before they can land the first role, and it's just this vicious cycle. So the first thing that I would encourage you to do is look at your network. Your network will allow you to find jobs that potentially are open to first-time managers, but it may not state it on the job description. And from there, do some reflecting on things that you've done in your past or you may be currently doing that make you a good manager or would make you a good manager. And really make sure you're highlighting these things on your resume and you're able to speak to them within your job interview so that you can show a company why they should invest in you. And last but not least, internal transfer. Hopefully your current company already knows that you're a complete, I was about to say badass, but, and they're willing to invest in you. So also that can be a good option for being able to get your foot in the management role. And if you know somebody that has made an internal transfer within your company, ask them about it and ask them if they have any tips on how to make your transition go well. So how do you excel as a manager? Shocker, more reflection. What type of manager do you want to be? For me, I knew I wanted to be the exact opposite of the first manager. And I wanted to really take from the people along in my career, or not take from them, but take qualities from the people along in my career that really helped build me up to be able to reach the levels that I have reached today. And know your triggers. Again, working with many different types of personalities all the time. And I'm not saying you don't have to do this as an IC, but again, as a manager, making sure that you're always, being mindful of your triggers so that you can also take time to step away and give yourself space to be able to come back and talk to your engineers again. Know when to be flexible and when to be rigid. A good example of somebody choosing to be flexible, as I'm sure you can imagine, when I was on a sabbatical, I woke up whenever I wanted, I went to sleep whenever I wanted. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I had a job interview with Spotify towards the end of it with Nivea Henry. Shout out to Nivea Henry. And so I decided to wake up in the morning and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna go to the grocery store, it's gonna be great, then I'm gonna talk to Nivea. But when I was leaving the grocery store, I saw some of my homeless friends and it was a really hot day. So I went back inside, I got them some water and ended up talking to them for incredibly too long. And it was something about getting in my car and seeing the time that made me go, oh my gosh, I've forgotten this meeting, tried to log in on my phone. Naturally, that did not work. And so I rush home, literally sprint up several flights of stairs to my condo, log into the meeting to see Nivea there, and I'm trying to apologize, panting. And really, she could have chopped me down at my knees in that moment. She knew how much I wanted this job, and she chose to instead give me a second. She saw that I had made a mistake, and she saw that I was apologetic, and instead she asked me if I just wanted to take a second to catch my breath and get some water. And at first I said no, but I was panting so hard I ended up having to take the suggestion. And so I got some water. She actually had time after our meeting slot, and she gave me the additional time to talk about why I thought that I would be a good fit for Spotify. And in that moment, she chose to be flexible. An example of when I am never flexible and I choose to be rigid comes with respect. If somebody on my team disrespects another person on the team, I cut it off immediately, publicly, in the moment, to let everybody know that is not what we're doing. We will always speak to each other with respect. Next, listen. This can be really hard, especially when you're a manager and you feel like you know what the problems are, but nobody knows the problems like the boots on the ground. So especially when you first join a team, ask your team what their biggest problems are and try to fix them. And also ask them questions like, how do you like to be managed? This is a very small question, but instead of trying to figure it out, asking them how they like to be managed or how they like to receive feedback can go a very long way. And in addition to this, I also set up regular one-on-ones with my engineers at whatever cadence they like, but this allows me to stay in touch with them and let them know, or let me know, what's really bothering them. This is not time for project status updates. We have plenty of time for that. We have stand-up every day, but this is a way for us to connect, especially in the remote world where we don't get those smaller touch points. And this is something that I did not think about when I was doing my job search, but it's something that has made the difference 10 times over. Go where you will be supported. This will be the first time in a long time that you will be a novice again, so you need to be comfortable with that, for one. But then two, having a support system around you that is able to help you make small course corrections can really expedite your career. So with me, I have a gaggle of people who I trust to my core and I know are leading with kindness with everything that they do with me. And so I've given them open season to basically give me feedback on anything that they see that they may not agree with. And so what that does is, instead of me going off of my path, getting back on my path, going off of my path, it's a bunch of small course corrections. So I'm only veering off a little bit and I can send all of my energy up to get these promotions as fast as possible and get me close to retirement as fast as humanly possible. And this is something I could honestly talk about all freaking day, but this is just a quick synopsis in the time that we had. So thank you all for spending a little time with me. And like I said in the beginning, I know we all know the impact of a really good engineering manager and a really bad engineering manager. So if you are going to make this leap, make sure that you're making it in good faith and do your best to be one of the ones that ends up being the good differentiator. Check me out on Blue Sky on Twitter. Thank you all so much.